15. We'll be studying from John chapter 15. It's been a couple weeks since we last looked at John 14. If you weren't here the Sunday that we looked at John 14 together, I shared with you that somebody had requested that I speak from these chapters in John. So I shared a message from John 14, and I would encourage you to go back and listen to that so that you have some context for some of the things that we'll share this morning. And that will take 10 minutes reviewing what we spoke of last and make this sermon shorter. John 15 is in the unit or the section when Jesus speaks to his apostles before his death. It's amazing that John 1 through 12 comprises the majority of Jesus' earthly ministry. John 1 through 12 focuses on certain miracles and teachings in the life of Jesus. And then John 13 through 17 slows down, and much of it is conversation that Jesus has on the last night that he has with his apostles. Quite amazing. It's as though you're watching the Gospels go by and John just has the ability to slow down and say, stop. Listen to what Jesus told us. And John lets us know in John 14 that they were all really nervous when he was leaving. They didn't know what to expect. They didn't know where he was going. And John transparently shows that they didn't have it figured out. Therefore, everything that we read that John shares are words that he and the 12 would have held so close to their hearts as they went out to fulfill the mission of Jesus, to seek and to save the lost. How are these words then that we read helpful to us as we might approach situations where we find pain, hurt, worry about our purpose, where we need to go, what we need to do? We can see these verses through the lens of the apostles nervous about the departure of Jesus. We can see then how Father, Son, and Spirit help us as followers of Jesus Christ. John 15, this morning we're just going to look at a few verses in the beginning of this chapter, because as I reflected on them this week, there is no way for me to give a reasonable length sermon and talk about the entirety of John 15. Just can't do it. It might even be impossible for me to give a reasonably length sermon on just a few verses in John 15. Read with me, beginning in John 15, verse 1. We're going to read 11 verses, and we may or may not talk about all of them today. I am the true vine, and my Father is the vine dresser. Every branch in me that does not bear fruit, he takes away. And every branch that does bear fruit, he prunes, that it may bear more fruit. Already you are clean because of the word that I have spoken to you. Abide in me, and I in you. As the branch cannot bear fruit by itself unless it abides in the vine, neither can you unless you abide in me. I am the vine, you are the branches. Whoever abides in me and I in him, he it is that bears much fruit. For apart from me, you can do nothing. If anyone does not abide in me, he is thrown away like a branch and withers. And the branches are gathered, thrown into the fire, and burned. If you abide in me, and my words abide in you, Ask whatever you wish, and it will be done for you. By this my Father is glorified, that you bear much fruit, and so prove to be my disciples. As the Father has loved me, so have I loved you. Abide in my love. If you keep my commandments, you will abide in my love, just as I have kept my Father's commandments and abide in his love. Again, I'm giving you the warning that I'm not going to say everything I've said in John 14, and there may be some things that go unsaid as we study these verses, but go back and listen to John 14. As we work through these verses this morning, we're going to do so in a very, hopefully, simple and practical way. What is the command in these verses? What is the instruction that Jesus gives here that jumps out more than most? As we read back through, you find in verse 4, abide in me. Abide. How often do you use that word? Abide. It's not a common word. This word in Greek is translated in other places, remain, dwell in, or stay. This is an interesting encouragement and instruction for Jesus to give his closest friends before leaving. They were worried. They didn't know where he was going. They didn't know what they should do. They knew they had all sorts of mistakes. They knew they were immature. They were worried about who was best, who was sitting at the right seat at the table, all these things. And what does Jesus say? Abide. Abide. This almost sounds so simple, we ignore it. Abide. Where? Abide in me, Jesus says. And what I want us to reflect on through these verses is what this means and then what it looks like. So, a few questions. Why did Jesus say this? Again, as a reminder, I don't write on the board so that you can read it. I write on the board so I remember it, and as I write it and say it, you might be able to write down what I'm saying. But why did he say this? Abide in me, remain in me. It's clear they were going to have a choice where to dwell, where to abide, where to stay. And Jesus gives them this beautiful analogy of vine and branches. So they were concerned about where he was going, how he was departing them. He had spent just about, you could say, every day with them. And now he was leaving, but his encouragement is, abide in me. The beautiful thing about this instruction from Jesus is that what he's placing before them is the very real relationship that although he was not going to be physically present with them, they were going to still be able to have a real transformative relationship with him. Stay with me. They were thinking, you're leaving, right? That is all they were concerned about. You're leaving us. And Jesus says, actually, I want you to stay with me. Stay with me. Now, don't get the cart before the horse, whatever that analogy means. You're saying, well, is that all that matters? I thought he's got lots of commands for me to do. Absolutely. He's going to talk about keeping commands, but what Jesus is doing is making sure we get the heart and the relationship in its proper place, so that then what we practice flows from that abiding relationship. Do you enjoy following the commands of someone that you do not have a relationship with? Think about a coach that you had in high school who gave you all sorts of commands, but you didn't have a relationship with them. It was probably very hard to follow them in every irrational, reasonable plan. Or a boss that you have that just swoops down every once in a while and tells you something and expects you to do. It's very difficult. Jesus says, abide with me and keep my commands. And so the abide is so important in these verses. Remain in me, dwell in me. And I know as we speak of that, it's like, okay, what does that look like? We'll get to that. Let's understand what he's saying. So, what does abide actually mean? To remain, or to abide, or to dwell? First of all, means that we must have a relationship. The relationship begins for us as we are baptized into Christ. This is when the relationship begins. And so to abide with him, to remain in him, means to actively have a relationship with the Father, Son, and Spirit. And so this is what it actually means to abide in Jesus. And we have that relationship as our most important relationship. We understand what it means to abide with someone else. We understand what it looks like to have a relationship with someone else. In fact, one of our challenges sometimes is that we are focused on a person as our vine rather than Jesus as our vine. And so Jesus as our vine means that he is the source of everything. And this is why the next question I have for you is this optional or is it essential? He is the vine, we are the branches. I could have gone out and brought a branch in here this morning. A branch by itself does what? Does nothing. A branch by itself does nothing. A branch must be connected to the vine in order to do what? In order to bear fruit. And so it's absolutely essential that we are to be connected with the vine. Also, that is where our nourishment comes from. That is our source. We cannot be a branch and force ourselves to bear fruit. The fruit bearing comes by being connected with the vine. Now, there are absolutely essential characteristics and essential responsibilities for branches. But are we connected with the vine, and do we depend on the vine as our life source and the one that produces the fruit? So is it essential to be connected with the vine according to these verses? Absolutely. It's not an optional thing. And when we are connected with the vine, the type of fruits that we're talking about bearing here, we'll just give one or two examples. We look at character in Scripture, fruits of the Spirit. So as we bear fruit in our life, that looks like peace. It looks like joy. It looks like compassion. We cannot do those things by ourselves in our own way. disconnected from the vine. We have to be connected with the vine in order for fruit to be produced in our life. Another type of fruit we produce is when we go out and make disciples, when we share the gospel. We cannot do that of our own. The Father provides the opportunities. The Father grants the increase. These are ways in which we realize that fruit is being born out in our lives, not because we by ourselves are doing something, but we are connected with the vine, who is supplying all things, who is the source of salvation, who is the one who brings life. But fruit is being born out because we are connected with the vine. Fourth, what happens when we don't bear fruit? Jesus gives a little warning in this passage. I suppose a little warning doesn't quite do it. What does he say? Well, let's go back. Apart from me, you can do nothing. Verse 5. It's pretty strong, isn't it? Apart from me, you can do nothing. If anyone does not abide in me, he is thrown away like a branch and withers, and the branches are gathered, thrown into the fire, and burned. Okay? That's a good reminder that this passage, no pun intended, has its roots in the Old Testament. In a number of places in the Old Testament, which we won't go to today for the sake of time, but Isaiah, Psalm, and a few other places refers and talks about Israel as a vine or branches that was not properly staying attached to its source of life. And so Jesus here, speaking of vine and branches and vineyard, draws all of this in. And when he says, I'm the true vine, what he's saying is, I'm the one that has done everything that the Father has asked me to do. Israel, Old Testament, had gone its own way. It had withered and it had burnt. And so too, we have to realize that if we decide to go our own way, do our own thing, this is serious. It's not just, well, your life's not going to be the same as everybody else. This is a warning from Jesus. And he is warning these men. Life with me as the vine, stay connected, and you will bear fruit. But if you do not, your end is punishment. With me or against me, Jesus says. And these aren't words we're going to gloss over. These are words that we're going to take. They're heavy, and we want to understand them as such, and really value them in that way. So how do we practically do this? How do we practically abide? That sounds great, doesn't it? Abide. I'm not going to just tell you, okay, so go out and abide this week. I think I would be falling short if I just left that as a general statement out there. Maybe there are things that you are